want to gloss over this. Really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what about history?
Now,
Just to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
What's happening, people? Buzz here. So we had Dr. Phil making his rounds on the podcast, JRE, talk shows, whatever, The View. And this one right here, which we're going to talk about here today, the David Pakman show. He went on there and talked with this left-wing character who is very left-wing in the sense that, Dr. Phil is not. Common sense has completely left the left. This is exactly what Dr. Phil is going to point out, that, hey, what happened to the family unit here? That's important. What about the crime in liberal cities? We need to talk about it. It's important. All these things that the left refuses to see and talk about and have reasonable, conscious talking points about. They just don't care. They just want their cities to go up in smoke in these riots. They want their kids to come out as a female. They want to, call, Bob a girl here in school and not tell the parents that now Bob is now Bobbyette or whatever. But nonetheless, this guy Dave Pakman wants to confront him and basically call him a right winger. That's what the title of his YouTube episode was called. Dr. Phil confronted, you are a right winger. I mean, look at that. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at this, guys.
No, that's why I say some of this is the unintended consequences of like technology. But then we've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family, trying to rewrite history. And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history, want to change what kids are being taught in history, want to change biology, we want to change all of the things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
But tell me more about, I don't want.
Yeah, so clearly Dr. Phil is correct. They want to change history. They want to change biology in the sense that there's, 90 genders, right? You can identify as a tree if you wanted to. They, them, thou, sensei. This getting out of hands in the sense where someone like Dr. Phil has to go and make the rounds and say, hey, crazy man, there's only two genders, man and female. I mean, he's not spitting that in his face, but he's making it obvious.
I want to gloss over this. I really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what about history? Just to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
Well, there's a lot of history to biology, and you would be missing a big point to pretend that there's not historical biology. But if you want to talk about history, we can, not in biology, but just talk about the history of mankind.
Yeah.
We've got areas where they don't want to talk about slavery. We had one a group of people that wanted to start describing slavery in history books as involuntary relocation.
Right.
This was not involuntary relocation. This was slavery. And we've got people that are wanting to rename schools because people.
Now, this happened in Texas a while back. State Education Board members pushed back on proposal to use involuntary relocation to describe slavery. So this happened in a Texas board. They proposed this to say, hey, this was involuntary relocation. You know what I'm saying? Because the term sounds stupid. Just say straight up, slavery. It is what it is. You don't got to sugarcoat. You don't got to spin the word. Let everyone see it for what it was. It's bad. It's horrible. Why do you need to spin the word? Proposal to teach slavery as involuntary relocation is sent to Texas Educational Board. What reason was the purpose to say this? Because leftists get their feelings hurt, probably. Because they don't want to hear, slavery was forced, this and that. They want to change the term just like they want to change terms for people who are minor attractive. They want to lessen it, I guess. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe I'm wrong. But there's no reason to lessen the term slavery as involuntary relocation. It makes zero sense.
People that were doing what were the mores and folkways of the times now would clearly be doing things against the law, certainly against mores and folkways, because they were slave owners at the time, are saying, well, now we have to tear down these statues, we have to rename these schools, and we don't want to teach about them. We have to learn from our mistakes as a society. We can't.
Clearly, Dr. Phil is again right again. Why do we want to erase history and tear down statues and, white out the term slavery or twist it to a different word to lessen its meaning? Because it hurts people's feelings. Slavery was a thing. Happened all across the world. It wasn't just America. Now we need to read about it in an unadulterated truth, a factual way. Put the pictures out there, put everything out there you want to put out there, but don't bend it and twist it into something that makes it less of what it was. We're not so, whiny baby crybabies that that's what we need. Some people need the straight up truth to get over it, to get through it, because the kids nowadays just want to, rename history, redo history, put things in there that weren't factual. There's 90 genders. Right, guys? Like, we can't continue to pretend like that stuff's okay. Tearing down statues, renaming schools, because people a long time ago had slaves. We can't measure them by today's standards and expect there not to be some sort of change. You can't do that. What was accepted then was then. Then is not now. Now is completely different.
Can't pretend those things didn't happen. They did happen. They were dark and ugly times in American history. We don't want to pretend those things weren't there.
So let me see if I understand,
crazy.
because there's a bunch of stuff. So if I hear you correctly, you're not in agreement with those who want to minimize the tragedy and brutality of slavery, but you also want to keep the school names. If a school is named after a slave owner, you're also okay with that because it will remind us and we will learn from it. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're oversimplifying what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is, if you're wanting to change American history to pretend that these people did not exist, and you want to measure them by today's yardstick rather than the yardstick at the time, that's what is referred to as presentism. And that's like saying, okay, you're going to drive through a neighborhood and the speed limit is 20. And you drive through that neighborhood doing 20, and then they come along and say, you know what, we're going to change the speed limit to 10, and we're going to give you a ticket for speeding when the speed limit was 20. It's now 10, but you weren't speeding when you were doing 20, but now it's 10. We're going to give you a retroactive ticket for doing what was acceptable at the time. That's called presentism. We're going to take what was done back at the time, pull it up into the current time, and condemn you for not knowing what was going to be acceptable 200 years later than when you did it. And I think that is really narcissistic and arrogant and rewriting history instead of letting people learn from the mistakes that were made in America and that we need to learn from so we don't make those mistakes again. Because some of those people also did some really good things at the time. We don't need to endorse everything they did, but we need to acknowledge the good and the bad.
When it comes to cancel culture.
Yeah, so you see he shifts to, when it comes to cancel culture, there's nothing to add on to it because Dr. Phil said it how it is. He spoke the truth. Why do we need to go and rewrite history? Because some people don't like the history. There's no point to saying, oh, we can't name schools after George Washington because he owned slaves. Well, 200 years ago, it was okay to own slaves. I'm not saying it's okay to own slaves, but back then it was. Now, should we go and call this man a horrible person? For you to decide. But did they do something great? They did. They founded this country. The framers framed the Constitution made this country, overthrew the monarchy that was the British Empire. You know, they founded this great place where it's now America, and I think that's a great thing. Fortunately, there was slaves. We can't not disagree that slavery was definitely bad. We're agree about it because it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, but it happened, and it's probably going to continue happening because let's face it, if you can say you're gonna do what I want you to do because you're my slave, then what are you gonna do if that person has a gun, or if someone sold you to that person, some sort of transaction as like a wife or whatever, how they do in some other countries.
Something you've also written and spoken about. What do you think is the prototypical or emblematic example of someone who was unfairly canceled over the last few years?
Well, I think the idea of cancel culture is more than one person, and I'm not going to speak specifically.
Okay, let's go fast forward to a part of the interview that I find interesting is because David Pagman brings up the conversation to religion and how it's affecting the birth rate in this country. And Dr. Phil hits the nail on the head with this one because religion is essentially the cornerstone, the foundation of this country. The reason why people came to America was mainly to worship their God, how they wanted to worship him, the Puritans, Quakers, etc. They wanted to come to this country as a family unit to create a family that values Christianity as a whole. Now, Christianity, nothing wrong with Christianity other than, they don't, homosexuality is bad, sex before marriage is bad. A lot of things that today's society does not agree with. People want to have these relationships outside marriage. They want to sleep with the same sex. They want to yada, yada, yada. And because the times don't like it, they see Christianity, anyone who worships Jesus or whatever, as the devil. They hate them. They confront them. They spit at them. They do all kinds of stuff to them because they feel like they hate them. Now, you can't hate someone for their religion because it's their religion. That's what they believe wholeheartedly. They're not trying to come after you. You know what I'm saying? But, in the same sense, they don't go after people who worship Islam. The Muslims are over there in the East throwing gays off buildings, stoning women. They don't come after them. Why? Because the left is scared of them, right? You can't even draw Muhammad without getting attacked. So what are they going to do? Go after the Christians. Take a look.
Was that? And I want to talk about that. Couple other things that I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to what you see happening in the political space right now, approaching it from a cultural perspective, as you say that you do you agree that a decline in religiosity is a problem in the United States, or is that not a concern to you?
It is a concern to me. I think we've seen church membership drop below the 50% mark for the first time in our country's history. And I think that that's a problem for a variety of reasons. And one of them being that that's one of the times that families tend to spend quality time together. It's time that they put their phones down. It's time that they usually got together and would go do something as a unit and focus on values that were constructive to the family. There was often meditation time involved. There was often discussions about what was discussed in church that day. They often had Sunday dinner together afterwards and spent quality time like they did no other time during the day.
Yes, that's one of the good reasons why, Christianity, Catholicism, whatever, it brings the family unit and the community together. They sit and they sing Kumbaya or whatever songs they wanted to sing that day. Listen to someone get on stage and talk about the good word. Now, is that inherently wrong? No, I think that's great. I think if you can go as a family unit to a place together with your community, that strengthens your bond with your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, with your neighbors. That's probably the best thing that we need to have in our society. Nowadays, people want to idolize individuals like, Sexy Red, Megan Thee Stallion, Drake, Little Nas X. We've seen what they're doing. We've seen stuff they post on Twitter. The music videos they make are absolutely demonic and horrible. Little Nas X was working on the devil, right? Sexy Red talks about her booty hole. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about. Just look her up and y'all see your videos and y'all tell me what you think in the comments, because these are the individuals that are being idolized by the youth. They don't want to sit down at Sunday with mom and dad, if mom and dad are together, to sit and talk about their day. That is like the worst thing that can happen, throwing holy water on them. That's something that's not happening nowadays, right? Because everyone's so stuck and focused on their phone. They're so focused on what these individuals, these celebrities are doing. They're not focused on the school grades. What's going on in your life, son? Nah, no one's not having those conversations, and that it needs to happen. It really does need to happen to keep society together. Really.
And I think it also is a product of our lessened birth rate, which has dropped because a lot of people join church when they have children because they want their child to be baptized or christened or whatever. And the fact that we've seen our birth rate drop to around 1.6 from 2.1, which is necessary to sustain our infrastructure right now, is a problem. And it seems that that's one of the main reasons that church membership has dropped off. There's fewer kids to go get baptized, christened.
I don't think, people going to church is affecting, the birth rate. I think individuals nowadays just don't want to have the responsibility of having a child. They can't afford to have a child. We've seen Bidenomics, how it's not working, what it's doing to our economy. Who wants to have a child right now and not be able to take care of it? The mother and father have to have a job. If not that, they have to have some securing of higher education in the medical field, oil field, somewhere to get a salary of over $200,000 to sustain a family and have a reasonable lifestyle. Not one where they're struggling working at McDonald's, because let's face it, that's just a stepping stone, right? You go from the fast food, you get your higher education, you go to the place you want to go, and then you go up from there. Now, if you can't get into college based on your own merit, then that's on you. That's on your parents for not instilling that on you. Let mom and dad know that, hey, you let your kids down because you didn't ask them what's troubling in the school. Are they having problems with math? They need a tutor. And maybe sometimes they can't afford that, but still, if you want to have a kid, you have to have a plan nowadays, because children cost parents a lot of money, upwards of $500,000 until the age of 18 years of age, until they leave the household and go off on their own journey. Now, the prices in the 80s or 70s, when our parents or grandparents, were having their children being raised, they can have, 10 or 12 of them, because they obviously go and get their little jobs or help around the house. They make it easier as they're growing up. Prices then and now are not comparable, but people nowadays love to compare it when they ask grandpa how much they bought their house for, and he's like 30 grand. They're like, oh my gosh, we have it bad. Yeah, buddy, buckle up, dude. You got to work hard today, because prices ain't the same as it was back then.
Or whatever, so people have less reason to go to church, and that's a byproduct of the lesser birth rate.
What do you make of the correlation, anyway, that as church attendance has declined, which you rightly point out, the rate of violent crime and murder in the United States has also been declining? Do you think there's anything because a lot of times the claim is made that as you remove God, whether it's from school or whatever, bad things happen, crime rates go up, etc. But we continue to see.
Come on, David. Crime rates go up. If you remove morals from your reality, like thou shalt not kill, steal, have sex outside of marriage, etc., you're removing the idea that there's a consequence after you die. Forget about the justice from the courts. You have this ideology that you believe in, and once you remove that, people are going to go rampant, right? They don't care. They don't have no morals or values. They haven't instilled. They didn't sit with mom and dad at the supper table if they were in the house still. Of course, you're going to have the uprising of violent crime. Liberal cities, to be exact. They got it bad up there, man. Y'all seen Chicago? Detroit? Y'all seen it. Y'all seen the news over there. I've done a couple videos on some individuals there, especially the youth. The carjackings, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds getting killed, gun violence, mutual combat out there is what they're calling it. Yeah, okay.
See violent crime rates decline in the United States correlating with decreased church attendance. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that that is a correlation, and I think some crime is declining in some areas and it's going up in others. But I think the idea is that if we will work to consequate crime, put some measure of consequence that goes with the crimes that are happening.
Yeah, consequences, because the prosecutors, liberal cities, are just letting these criminals out left and right. Oh, little Timmy went and carjacked these people and killed someone. Let's let him out with no bail. Oh, he's doing it again. Oh, don't worry about it. He's just a little kid. That's what they do. No, you need real consequences for crime. When people are carjacking and, window stealing, shopping, busting windows, stealing iPhones, there has to be consequences. There needs to be examples being made of individuals to keep people from doing this, to keep having these weekend riots of these these break and grab stabbings, whatever. Seriously, because if no one's saying, hey, look at this guy over here on the news, he did exactly what you're doing, and look at how much time he's getting and how much his bail is. He can't pay that bail. He's got 5 flat, and he's got probation. Then they're going to keep doing it, obviously, right?
And give these people some result for what they do and give them some opportunity to turn their life around, learn how to do things differently than what they're doing, then we'll see it continue to decline in the areas where we've got good trends and turn it around in areas where we don't. But what I think is most important, particularly among our young people, is that we make sure that our parents are involved in our kids' lives so they don't get started in even misdemeanor crime right now.
That's
shoplifting.
For sure.
Shoplifting is up, and these are misdemeanors, a lot of which don't get prosecuted. And you wonder, a lot of this is happening with young kids, and I fear they're getting exploited by gangs, and you wonder, where are their parents? If they are vulnerable to gangs using them to go do shoplifting, which annually is over $100 billion a year in terms of overall loss and shrinkage from corporations, then somebody's doing that, and a lot of it is organized crime, and they're exploiting young people to do it because they know there's not a lot of consequence for it. And you got to.
Yeah, so Dr. Phil's right about that. There's not a lot of consequences for little Timmy when he's stealing under X amount and it's only a misdemeanor. They don't care. They're not stopping them at the door because they know if they stop them, they might get sued. These gangs taking advantage of the youth because they're not prosecuting them like they would them. Even still, they still get out on bail, probably. The DAs are like, yeah, no problem. You keep stealing and beating people, hitting people with bricks. No problem. Keep stealing cars. No problem. The Kia boys. Stealing all these Kias. Running over, retired police officers like that old man, that chief police in Las Vegas. What did the kid say? He's going to be out in no time, out in a week or something like that? Why? Because he saw the news. The prosecutors just letting people out left and right for whatever crime. We need to strengthen our ties with each other, the family unit. Really. Because if not, then you're going to have violence go up and up and up until it gets to this breaking point where everyone's like, look, if we don't fix this, then people are going to be leaving the cities, these liberal run cities like we're seeing today, like when California, people are leaving California to come to these red states like Florida, Texas. They're leaving their states because they're tired of getting robbed. They're tired of getting held up. They're tired of their stores putting their stuff behind lock and key like Walgreens and CVS if they even stay in the state or city that they're getting robbed every other day. Because let's face it, California put laws in place that let the criminals know that, hey, you guys can steal up to this amount. You're cool. So now you got criminals literally coming out with calculators knowing what they can and can't steal. It's insane. It's insane what the left are letting people get away with in the name of social justice. Wokeism is the disease, people. Common sense needs to come back into our life, and Dr. Phil is telling everyone, hey, we got a brain, right? Let's do something about this uptick in violence. Let's do something about these, low birth rates. Let's do something about the family unit and tell everyone it's important to have everyone in the household. Mom, dad have kids. Kids get raised right. Go to church if you're religious. Have good grades, right? It should make for a decent individual. Y'all let me know in the comments what y'all think about this. Like, comment, subscribe, the best review. See you on the next one.